was a not good kid, so you probably wouldn't know him. He was one
Who
of
said
the.
I was a good kid, Mary?
I'm just,
Yep. All right, sorry about that.
well, Jim's done now. He's done.
You did,
He
Jim?
thought the meeting was supposed to start at 6.
Oh, it's 6
You go home?
we're all quit.
Brittany, did you start? I'm sorry.
Yes, I just started the meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks everybody for coming. We're gonna get started on this. So we did get something today from Ben. I just handed it out to everybody. He had some recommendations about some of the different things in the short-term rental. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to have another one. Plus, we had about 10 letters come in from residents. And then, like I said, we things we should go over, because if we end up adding some of these things in, we have to like start all over. So we'll close the public hearing and start another one, and then send this out to everybody again and go from there. So here's your chance. If you want to change anything to it, is now the time. Because once we get going with this, I'd like to put it to bed or just not do it at all. So, so anybody want to start with anything first that jumps out at them?
Yeah, I got one thing, page 4. Part B, insurance standards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with the paragraph essentially stating, they're basically holding the town harmless for anything that goes wrong with their rental. I would think that you might want a little bit more teeth in that and have them actually add the town. They've got to get liability insurance anyway. I feel better if they put the town on there as an additional insured. Otherwise, you could come in and go, yeah, you're indemnified, and you know, something goes to hell, and they got nothing.
Right.
You know, if the town is on there, then they've got something, you know, concrete in writing that, you know, other than just somebody's.
Can you talking to Mike there?
Other than just someone's, just, you know, statement, that, yeah, we'll hold you harmless. You know, I doubt you're gonna be able to hold anybody to that, you know, just a verbal statement.
So add insurance
I
on,
would think just, if they're gonna add if they're gonna have to provide insurance anyway, a certificate of insurance, it's really no big deal to have the town added as a separate insured.
well,
I think that's just.
depending on who you deal with, it is, because it's very costly. Some insurances are.
Yeah, but just adding an additional insurance shouldn't be that costly, right?
No, but it's depending on the insurance company. It could be up to $100.
No, you know, as much as I would feel for the people who have to spend the extra 50 or $100, I think it's in the town's best interest to have their, you know, rights covered also.
Anybody else?
That 50 or 100, I feel we have like two different classes of people who are running the Airbnbs. You got somebody who's trying to keep grandpa's house afloat and pay the taxes off it, and then you got people who are making a tidy profit off of it. And the conversations I've had with people, you know, with the people who have Airbnbs and things like that, I've had several of them come up to me so far, and have like volunteered to say, listen, jack up the rates, put in higher penalties, make it cost more. I mean, they're not. Those people are not afraid of spending the extra money, and they're not sitting there saying that we don't want to, you know, get nickel and dime death. But I think that there are some of them that's going to hurt, and it's like everything else. It's kind of, there's two sides of the coin on that.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying that it's, you know, somebody gives you a verbal assertion that, yeah, we've got, you know, we'll take care of it, and they don't, which in this day and age probably could happen, you know, faster than you think. You know, the town could be in for tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees just to get out of a suit that they don't have anything to do with. So, I mean, I'm sorry if it costs somebody else an extra $100, but it could very easily save the town, an awful lot of money in attorney's fees.
Sure.
And no, nothing against anybody who wants to have an Airbnb. I think as a town board, our responsibility is to look out for the town, not the Airbnb person.
No, I agree.
I don't have any opposition to that. A builder has to put the town on their additionally insured, right? When we take out a permit, so I don't see the difference.
Mhm.
Right? Or am I wrong, Mary? That's
You're
right,
right. No,
right?
They do.
And all right, on page 5, one of the things that Ben had added too is we didn't set a time that if there was something to have happen in a contact person within 30 minutes or a time period determined by the board. I thought we did kind of talk about that.
There was, yes, there was. It was, and
I thought we did.
Might be on the application and not,
no, it was in the last. I just read it again this afternoon. Pretty sure. I could be losing my mind. All right, start.
I think it would have been in the same spot, Peter.
No, 157.6, page 2. This, number 4 is a list of each property owner, the name of any manager or managing agency managing the property, including names, addresses, telephone numbers, email of each, names, telephone number, and email address, contact person who shall be responsible and authorized to act on the owner's behalf, promptly remedy any violation of the standards in this chapter. Contact person may be an owner or an agent designated by the owners. To serve as contact person shall respond to any correspondence or concern from the CEO within 24 hours or a shorter period if requested or demanded by the CEO.
Which, if somebody's having somebody manage it anyway, should be a lot less than 24 hours. Should be probably 12. Right?
But you can't just assume managers. You have to assume that like
Somebody.
somebody like I'm the owner and I'm managing it myself,
Right.
right? So 24 hours is reasonable. Gives them a day. If you call me at 3:00 on Monday, I haven't told 3:00 on Tuesday to answer yet.
But the problem is if it's a situation of garbage or something like that, 24 hours for the neighbor is a long time. We usually get on garbage pretty quick.
What is our garbage law? Right, we keep going back to laws that already exist. So what does our garbage law say? How long does someone have to pick it up before we're allowed to go in and pick it up? Or until they have to do something? Right, this is like, it's a law that's already on the books.
I feel the 24-hour notification fees.
I do too, actually.
And, most of the time when we're talking about your life or death.
Right, or a shorter time period if requested or demanded by the CEO. So I think depending on the circumstance.
All right. Everybody's okay with the 24.
I just want to, only because I just went to Florida and I just did an Airbnb in Florida. And they have people that are responsive. Like you text them and within 20 minutes, I get a text back. So I would imagine a good Airbnb, which may not be our problem, but would be responsive to get back to me in shorter than 24 hours, but.
Okay.
But then if you leave enough, and that, what does that mean? Like, unless the building code enforcement wants it sooner, how do they know if I want it sooner? I call and say, you have 2 hours to get in touch with me, is that?
All right, I need,
Severity of the violation.
But I'm saying, how, it's saying unless, 24 hours unless the code enforcement.
Yeah, they'll never
Official.
know. Unless, I mean, again, you leave a voicemail and hopefully they listen to your voicemail and don't ignore you for 24 hours and they listen and answer you within 2.
I mean, if it was a fire, then you want somebody there a little faster. You know,
But what if they don't respond to me within 24 hours? Is that a violation? Like, I mean, that's,
To be fair, if we're talking a fire, it doesn't matter because if there's a fire, you gotta assume that they're not gonna be renting out the house the next 24 hours. You know what I mean? So they're gonna, so like, the severity of the violation is never gonna be enough where 24 hours, I feel like has to be
That's what I mean.
lessened, you know what I mean? And unless, Mary, unless you can think of something that like needs to be answered, you do it a lot more than me. You know what I mean? I can't think of something that needs to be corrected.
I'm just saying, but it states in here, 24 hours or a shorter time period if requested or demanded by the CEO. So I'm just saying, it
That's kind of it.
putting
though.
me in a,
Right, but not only that, but
Easier to just eliminate it then?
I mean, you know, you would get the argument, you know, if I have the neighbor complaining or, you know, like I was just going through a file today it was from 2008, just a random file and noise complaints, music all night long, and, you know, I'm trying to get with the state police to, you know, coordinate and go there because, you know, it's at night, obviously, and stuff, and you know, somebody will say, well, what makes it, you know, that she demands 2 hours notice? What is so imperative? Why is this one, you know, it's just opening the door just for a little slap down on me. I'm just saying.
Then I say eliminate it. It's within 24 hours. That way
Okay.
you don't have to make a decision. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'll take the
I-
decision, well, not I, but will take the decision away from you and just make it 24 hours.
Okay.
and I think that if you have an issue that requires that kind of response, I mean, if you're talking police or some kind of a hazard, that it's going to be the tenant's responsibility at that point, the renter, to comply with whatever the problem is, and then you have, you know, the owner has 24 hours to respond to you to say, yeah, okay, you know, I had a problem here and here's how we're going to fix it.
Right.
But, you know, I think some of the emergency ones that would require, you know, a very, very fast response is going to be more. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what some of those would be that the owner would have had to.
Well, I don't know.
Contact.
It's not necessarily the owner, but it's the person who's managing it, you know, I mean, loud music. Like if they have 24 hours to notify me, loud music continues to play, right?
Well, it's not that, but isn't that a police
Right?
issue though?
Because you don't enforce that anyway. It's called the sheriff's office. And then I hope they call you because then you can call the owner and say, hey, this is like 1 or something against you, you know what I
Correct,
mean?
right. I could document it and we could call the sheriffs and depending if they have enough people on, as you know, Mike, right? They would go in or go out, but you're asking, I'm just answering what I think would be if it was a house next to me with loud music playing or whatever, you know?
I totally agree with it.
Yeah,
You know, nobody wants that,
yeah,
but
But there's a law on the books already.
right, that's my point is if we have a law on the books already and you're home or you're in Florida and they're playing loud music, are you going to come up here and bang on the door or are you going to somebody should be able to notify at that point if the neighbors are all upset because there's so much loud music, somebody should be picking up the phone and calling the sheriff. You know, I don't think it's the code enforcement problem at that point. You know, that's more of a police issue to remedy the problem or get it under control. And then, you know, we should be notified. And then you contact the person, they got 24 hours to.
I wouldn't even imagine calling code enforcement. I'd be calling.
Police.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever dare say but I know plenty of friends that were at parties when they were younger that the police showed up because of loud music, right? And it
The
was never the
police.
code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
So,
Noise might have been a bad example.
I'm just saying,
Right.
but these are the only things that like people really can complain about, right? It's noise,
The heat
garbage.
stops working in the house, if the tenant has a complaint that the heat stopped working, or if something breaks, if the plumbing turns off, there are plenty of other things. So I guess the idea is just wondering what the severity is, if it should be answered within 24 hours, or if they have a shorter time.
24 hours.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think you have to differentiate between noises. Nobody's gonna die because of loud music. It's a nuisance more than anything else. You have a car that runs off the road through the front of the house, or a fire or something like that.
And
That's.
to
a
be
whole
fair,
different-
Kira, most of those, right, I've rented plenty of Airbnbs. I would never think of calling the municipality, right? I would just be calling the Airbnb owner.
Correct.
So not to say you guys aren't gonna be in the loop, because maybe someone would. I just assume most would never.
No, the air conditioning's not working, you
I
need to
hate-
get to fix it.
Or I'm gonna get another Airbnb, you know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
And
Exactly.
24 hours just ensures that the situation's gonna be dealt with in a timely
Yeah.
fashion. It's not an
not ignored,
emergency
right,
type regulation. It's more to deal with the fact that we have a bad host and we're gonna be on top of dealing with the situation. Either starting fines or at least a discussion about how this shouldn't happen again between the town and the owner.
And that's just not short-term rentals, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
That's a regular resident that has parties every weekend. We had it on Spruce Road recently where they were calling sheriffs and the police all the time, and then they were calling here, complaining about the loud music every weekend. And it was a resident, so it's the same kind of situation. Page 3, the one about the all rooms where persons sleep shall comply with requirements for bedrooms set forth with state fire prevention and full-size conversion sleep accommodation, furniture, futons, beds, etc. might be reduced to the number of occupants in the STR. So this is one of the things about Ben, recommending about changing or wording. I mean, the state fire code more than anybody else. So, I mean,
does that make better sense?
Per bedroom and not, can't use a futon? Is that what he's saying?
it sounds like it. Yeah. Also,
He's saying remove
might delete.
the number 2, right? Of that thing, it says, oh no, I lied, it just says 2 in parentheses. 2 people per minimum full-size convertible sleeping accommodation. And then add at the bottom of it, all rooms where a person sleeps complies with,
So yes.
which means they have a means of egress and all of that stuff, which makes sense. Yeah,
Well, does that help cover people who are going to set up a whole bunch of cots and stuff in the living room and
That would prevent them from doing that.
Because they'd have too many in there.
but don't we already have the clause in there that it's based on bedrooms and the occupancy of
We do, but we also put in there 2 people per full-size convertible sleeper.
Which is right above it there, maximum
So
occupancy.
he's basically saying, use the state fire prevention building code so that if those rules change, you don't have to go back and.
I would just
Change.
remove the
Good.
sleeper,
2 people.
add his thing, and then it goes right back to the septic system, right? So
Mhm.
if you have enough to have someone sleep in your living room and your septic system's good enough, then you can have a sleeper in the living room. Which it never will be because septic systems are based on bedrooms, but
So pretty much kind of,
it goes right back to bedrooms.
it reins in the maximum amount of people. So it
Which
eliminates the
listen,
2
no one's
floors.
ever gonna listen
Right.
to.
Well, but then they're taking responsibility for it instead of
Correct.
the town being, hey, this is how they wrote it up. Going back to that, where they can sue you for it. If you're saying that you're supposed to go by that fire code.
2 per bedroom, meet fire codes,
Right.
and your house, you shouldn't
It makes
exceed
sense.
the
2 per
septic
bed,
system.
period.
Ben must come
That's
out of
normal
policy, but-
anyway, right, Mary, for like what DEC figures for bedrooms, isn't it 2 people per bedroom, and that's how they get the 400 gallons per day? Pretty sure that's how they
Yeah,
do it.
they
right?
do it by bedrooms,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So then no sleeper sofas or anything like that would be permitted.
Okay.
What we're saying, correct? I'm
That's
just, I'm out, okay.
Crossed out.
Yeah, I think we changed.
I mean, we could just talk to Ben about rewording that, right?
So number 10.
Yeah.
Gets basically crossed out. read-
Eliminate this part, the two, where is
Yeah,
it?
2 people permit.
Yeah, that one. Eliminate that and then add what Ben said, just to confirm that the bedrooms meet, fire and building code. Which is means egress, smoke detector. Which is fair. We shouldn't put a bed in a basement that they can't get out of.
Right.
Right. Yep, yep.
All right, so this other one on page 5, number B or letter B, states. Well, one of the things Ben said was one of the public comments was to notify not just adjacent property owners, but also owners of the properties within 500 feet of the STR. Similar to notice for planning board and zoning applications.
I want to point out, when Mary and I went over the calculation for the fee, I did not consider measuring the properties 500 feet. I don't think it'll affect the fee much, but I just want to make
We
that
just thought
clear.
adjacent would be next door, not do the 500-foot radius, which is a little more time consuming.
Well, depends on where you are.
Yeah, you could have 50 neighbors, or you could have 5. It depends on the size of the neighboring parcels, but I just wanted to point it out. I didn't
wasn't-
consider that when
So
we
when you
looked at the
guys said
fee.
adjacent, because I think the conversation came up because what defines adjacent? So were you guys just thinking property?
Like
owners
what
to the left and
touches.
Right, or are you thinking like
Across the street.
if properties were back to back like this, say, you would tell these people.
So if they
behind-
touched and if it was across the street from them, if the road wasn't there and they touched, it
Mhm.
would have been those properties. We didn't consider any further than that. But if it's 500 feet, if you're in the hills, it could be a bunch. If you're, on
Yankee
County
Lake,
Route
it could be a
56.
A lot.
That's, yeah, they're the two places that I'm thinking of. That would be a ton of owners.
And again, I don't know if that would really affect the price that we figured, but just wanted to say it.
Right. Or
It is more time consuming,
Sure, would
just
be.
saying that.
Has to be, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it goes from 4 letters.
Cause you're gonna,
to-
you're gonna
it
touch,
could go to
you're gonna touch
20
a lot of
letters.
partials.
Right.
Right.
So
We
you
don't
can,
know.
how can they jump in?
Essentially have to give them the names and addresses of all those people that they're gonna have to notify.
How much extra work is that on your part?
Depends on where the property is, 'cause I have to measure them.
Mhm.
I mean, that,
Because then
if
like,
it's just adjacent, I mean, what happens to the guy that's directly across the
Yep.
street?
We would count those. So
You
like
would
I
count
said, we
him
would
across
count
the
like
street, essentially, if he was touching.
These are our, kind of our own regulations. Do we
Mhm.
need 500 feet? Do we rein in the radius? 250? I mean,
So just like a dumb picture,
I
just
count
so I
them. I count
understand.
them,
You
yeah.
would count this one, this one, this one, and this one.
So if there's a property here, property
You would
here,
count
property
these as
here,
Anybody that
these would be
touches,
counted. So
Okay.
basically, if
Right,
you had
but-
a square, it
but-
would
but-
just
Just
be
a
any
big
of these.
square.
But
If
I'm just going with the road, there's a road going across.
We would
Yeah.
count them.
Yeah, so
So-
they're counting these. That would be here.
That's a
If that
road.
makes sense.
Is that a
This
road?
is a road. Yeah, that's
Okay.
my little road.
Okay.
This is the Airbnb. So they would tell all of these adjacent
Essentially in a
properties.
square, so
So anyone that pretty
So,
much borders
like-
their property, including across the road.
like 3 across the road, that their house and
Mhm.
2 here. If There was anything in the back.
So we're taking out 500 feet and it's just adjoining properties.
Ben is suggesting 500 feet. It's up to you guys if you want to do that.
I don't know if he's suggesting it. It was the conversation we had.
He
in
said,
the
he's just
public
saying it
comment the
seems
other night.
reasonable, but now we're talking about it could be a lot.
Yeah,
be a
a
lot
lot
more
more
work.
work on you guys. There's no reason.
we were using how the boards have their outreach to neighbors as a.
Yeah, that was
500
the
feet.
example.
500 doesn't really matter. You still measure.
I still have to measure.
You're
it.
still measuring. It's the same
Yeah.
amount of time. Just
The other one's
probably
very
less
simple, you just
parcels.
go.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, even if you think of Wardsboro Hills or Yankee Lake or maybe even Maston Lake, I mean, how many lots are still only 100 yards or 100 feet in the front, so you could be encompassing
The
like
whole side of it.
the whole road. Especially in like Maston Lake, you
Right.
hit every house on the front lake there,
And you might
Because you have to go in the corners of each property line. So if your house was this one, we would have to go to each corners to measure.
I don't just do the corner, I go everywhere
Well,
just to
that-
make sure I don't miss anything.
Yeah, and like a 500-foot radius
You
like
basically
that.
look at a tax map, right?
Yeah,
Anything that
yeah.
touches it, you would.
Well, yeah.
Alright, so
If
dumb
it-
question, how can we define adjacent properties better than,
I mean,
because
I was
that
thinking
sounds
the
like a
same.
lot better than the 500-foot circle and making you
Yeah.
trace out a circle and write down all these people's
Honestly,
names and
those town
addresses.
rules are nutty, but what if the adjoining property is like Yankee Lake? We notify the
Yeah,
Yankee Lake Association.
definitely. They're a
So
property.
that's a property, right? So they would be notified that an Airbnb is going at 76 whatever road.
Yeah,
Okay. I see that as better. How can we
Sounds
better
simple.
define adjacent though? So people don't question what adjacent means. That's the question.
Would it help if you, either the board or building department come up with kind of a boilerplate letter that these people could just kind of fill in?
That's what it
Yeah.
would be.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
we'd have to do. We do for the meetings, we're just talking about the distance and figuring out who's notified. That's
Mhm.
what they're trying to figure out. How we define adjacent.
I mean, now that you explain it, I get it. And adjacent makes sense,
It does.
right? It makes perfect sense now.
And then they would have to bring the delivery receipts back to you to put
Yeah.
in their file, okay. All right.
I think adjacent's fine.
Just leave it as is and let people deal with it. If they have a question, just ask.
Do we remember who questioned the 500? What the letter was about? I have
It
to-
wasn't, so the 500 just came up. I think I said it just because it said it was similar. It will make it similar to the zoning board. Who does it?
But
Yeah.
was it because somebody questioned something?
They were questioning what adjacent meant.
Yeah.
About what
Yeah.
is
What does
adjacent
it
and who will
mean?
be notified.
Yeah,
Right.
who would be
I
notified?
mean, You might be 3 yards away, 3 properties away, but 150 feet, and the noise would travel so that. Um,
I'm good with it.
so any property that
sense.
touches, so like this, so on
We gotta come up with
the.
some kind of definition.
there's a general
Explain
definition
how
for
it's
adjacent,
supposed
I
to
don't know if there's a state one.
Put that into our.
Any property.
We can expand to,
The legal.
Yeah, maybe
wording of
he
that.
has a word, any touching property, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And then
Including
any
across the road.
direct.
Adjacent adjoining properties.
Directly. Across, how do you say that?
Maybe
Yeah.
adjoining might have actually.
But if you got a street that
Right. so
cuts
we
it off,
want
it's not,
that.
Yeah,
it's not
it's-
adjoining.
Adjoining, but
And across the street, right? It makes it complicated. That's why I just think adjacent and let it be your guys' definition of what it is. Right? Some things have to be a little ambiguous. I don't know how else better to define adjacent.
Well, that's really up to us if they're gonna provide the names of the adjacent properties.
Yeah, and you guys obviously know what adjacent is because that's, you guys just told us. So, you know what I mean? You guys are the only ones that really matter who's the adjacent properties, I guess is the word, other than the applicant. And it doesn't matter whether it's a 500-foot circle or adjacent, they're still gonna have to send these notices.
Right.
Mhm.
So.
they were up then.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there isn't a better way, just stick with adjacent. And tell Ben to suck it up.
Anybody else have anything that they see that they'd like to ask?
On here, haven't had a chance to finish going through all the.
I have one. So this looks, the zoning board of appeals shall not have jurisdiction to hear appeals. So we're saying Mary's the final say?
I mean, do we need some form of appeals?
You should.
I think
Right.
there has to be, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can appeal my decision.
Everybody, yeah, for
have to have-
anything else you can, so
Right, so
why
I don't-
couldn't we hear?
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
Well,
know.
here, well, let's throw a horseshoe and everything.
Where is it? Oh,
6, number 7, page 6,
Okay.
number 7 at the bottom.
Well. That's for violations.
I'll notice.
They don't usually hear violations.
But it says or interpretations of this chapter. So I could agree with, right, violations don't go to the zoning board, do they? Well, no, they could,
If
right?
it's
Like
an
a,
interpretation, if they're.
yeah,
appealing.
So
right, like you can't, this is gonna sound like a dumb question, but if you give me a garbage violation, I can't possibly go to the zoning board for it, can I? Like, does that even make sense? Or does the zoning board have to hear me?
It would have to be an interpretation, it would have to be a use, or it would have to
It'd be an
be,
interpretation to appeal a
would
garbage
be-
violation.
yeah.
which
But
would
what's
be-
the interpretation?
Well,
It's not an
that's up to you.
interpretation,
That's
it's a
what you-
fact.
what your interpretation is versus what the code's interpretation is.
So this isn't garbage, this is.
My,
art.
yeah, this is my art, you know what I mean? I don't,
The board would have to, they could turn you away, you could pay the fee, go to them, and the
just
attorney
say.
could say no. But
But you
you have the right to appeal it.
So
this
you
is
have the
saying-
right to appeal every violation that you guys write, pretty much.
As an interpretation,
Mm,
to an extent, I suppose.
interpretation of how.
Yeah, it costs you $250 every time. And then if they decided to entertain it and hear it, it'd be an additional $100 plus the 500 feet for the notices of public hearing and the certified return receipt mailers you'd be sending, so it would be a little.
So unless
And
it's a
then they-
serious thing that they wanna fight that they don't agree with you guys on, like no one's gonna go to the zoning board for a garbage violation or something
They might.
stupid like that. Well, listen, then we will gladly take their money and shoo them away, and I will say that publicly and
And
openly because that was
wasn't-
just silly.
It wasn't, it hasn't been that way. So, I mean, it's not.
No one has.
No.
It's done that.
No.
But this is saying that the zoning board would not. hear
Yeah, this
anything
is saying that the
saying
zoning board has
this.
no say in this. Mary is the final say in law. She's the
Okay.
judge, jury, and execution.
I don't.
Well, there has to be,
Let's give it.
Thank
The
you.
zoning board of appeals doesn't have jurisdiction. I'm sure the court does.
Well, that's, yeah, they're just saying the zoning board would have no, they wouldn't do any interpretations or anything in regards to short-term rentals. They would have to go to a different,
They
either
would
the
have-
court, maybe the town board or the state.
well, and I think it all comes down to whether or not we give a permit for a short-term rental.
Right.
Because they have violations. So now they're gonna come to the zoning board and say, my violation shouldn't be because,
They could appeal the violation if it had nothing to do with the short-term rental.
Right.
But they wouldn't, the zoning board would not entertain them if they say it's in regards to a short-term rental or it's holding me up from doing a short-term rental. I should be able to do a short-term rental. They'll shut them down and say it's got nothing to do with your violation.
so that's probably why Ben put it in there to say that. Because,
Don't want to override the violation and go to the zoning board.
right.
I'm just confused on the why it got, it almost, I don't know if that was in the original one.
No.
I honestly
don't
don't
think
have
so.
the
He-
original one.
He added it.
This was
I think it's-
added.
he put it, I guess today.
Well, I guess when you're appealing a violation.
I really
that
gotta go.
freezes- And we're in a situation here where we can't freeze enforcement. You know, especially with like the noise stuff, we needed to stop and desist. And so if they bring it up to the zoning board and appeal that violation for. Or your strike one, that means that while it's being appealed, that time period, they can just keep doing what they've been doing.
Yeah, Mary, we're gonna get called here in a minute too. So working fire. Probably Highview or Hideaway,
So I think
Jack and Jill, Hideaway and Highview Terrace.
you look at the last sentence.
Yeah, looks like it's just in regards to short-term
So-
rental.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I don't. So like they'd be, if they get a violation, what are they continuing? You know what I mean? Like if they get a garbage
They
violation
can
right now,
continue hosting people in the dangerous
so they
house
just,
while
Right, and I cannot take any action while they're in the zoning board. It's almost like,
okay, but
It
there's a
freezes it
difference
for the
between like a
appeals process.
garbage violation and if you condemn the house, that's technically a violation, right? So to speak, so
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't continue to have an Airbnb when the house is condemned. There has to be some sort of, even if they're appealing that it's not, it shouldn't have been condemned. Right? I could go to the zoning board and say, Mary's wrong. I have an engineer that says that the house isn't, it's perfectly fine. I can fix it and make it work, right? That's possible for me to argue that to you. So I don't know if that goes before the zoning board or who that goes before, but I couldn't possibly keep having an Airbnb in there when that's happening,
Can I ask a question though?
right?
You're,
And I know I'm throwing curveballs.
you're only appealing once you've been convicted of something. You're not appealing, hey, you gave me a violation, that's not fair, I'm
No.
appealing it. So
No.
you have to have been convicted,
no.
no?
Mm-mm. They're not, it's not technically convicted, because if they come here and go to the ZBA, which stops enforcement, which I cannot take them to court for the court to hear the case until the ZBA has made their decision.
But if they do another violation that's separate, you can give them another violation. You can, that doesn't give them freedom to do whatever they want to
But I
do
don't
because
know.
they're appealing one violation.
This one just confuses me.
So
I'll be
the
honest.
zoning board can't hear anything about a short-term rental. If Mary gives them a violation for something in
Let me
regards
just,
to it.
I'm sorry to bother you, so, I mean, so if somebody applies to me for a short-term rental and I say denied because you have violations, this is saying you can't go to the zoning board and say the zoning board, but I should be able to go. I should be able to do this even though I have this is a stupid violation. I should be allowed to do this.
Doesn't give them a loophole.
It doesn't give them a loophole.
Correct. So they can appeal whatever violation it is outside of the short-term rental.
Mhm.
So if they built an addition without a permit and they apply to do the short-term rental and they receive a denial because they've got an open violation for construction done without a permit, they can appeal the construction done without a permit if they wanted to,
Right,
but they couldn't appeal the fact that their short-term rental was denied.
right.
All right, so
That makes sense.
But
let me
that's
ask
still
you.
confusing, right? I mean, the way that it
It's-
says.
yeah, it
because
just
You
confused
want to
me
use
more.
it as a short-term rental and you have an addition that's in violation.
They can
Forget the addition, let's just use a shed, right? I always think of the sheds because people put sheds in the wrong place, so that's a violation. So if they go to the zoning board, they can still have, if they appeal and say, I'm gonna go to the zoning board for a variance, because I need a variance to have the shed in the
Right.
side yard that's
Right,
considered the
right.
front yard, whatever.
The
They could,
shed stays until the zoning board makes a decision.
but then they could, like,
and
under,
they
if
keep
we.
using that shit.
Okay, I get that, but under this part,
They,
would they still be able to get an Airbnb or they're saying no Airbnb?
so they can appeal the violation on the shed or go for the
But it's
variance for
separate.
the shed.
Mhm.
But until that violation is remedied, they wouldn't get assuming, I don't know,
They can't.
they
keep
wouldn't get a
operating it
permit
as-
for the Airbnb.
Right.
Right, they wouldn't have an
It
approval
doesn't,
for it.
so it doesn't give them, freeze everything so they can keep operating Airbnb.
Right, if it's an existing Airbnb and they get a violation,
Hmm.
Right now, it doesn't, a violation revokes I forget what a violation is.
Whatever it says,
It
you-
suspends your permit until it's fixed, right?
correct.
Technically,
But again, this specific section is just saying, if you have a short-term rental or you want a short-term rental and you receive a denial that you can't have it because you have an existing violation, you can't appeal the denial of your short-term rental. If you wanted to, you could appeal your violation, but not the denial of your short-term rental.
So I have to remedy the violation.
Yeah, instead of-
I
Right.
get an
Instead of
Airbnb. So we're
appealing it, you still
basically
get your-
eliminating
your
Airbnbs,
permit.
trying to go around the violation.
Right,
Correct,
and that,
just
that's,
like-
that's number
Feel like
three.
I-
That makes sense.
Sense, I guess.
Yeah, number three.
Yeah, number three, B3.
Just hope that short one sentence, number 7 is adequate to cover this situation.
I think we're thinking of too many scenarios that honestly are never gonna happen.
You never know.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The one in a lifetime for these scenarios.
So reading through a lot of the mail that we got, the emails, particularly coming out of my ward, there's still a lot of concern, I think, on both the methodology behind the whole thing, as far as whether an Airbnb is a commercial enterprise, and then having us override the zoning, making it a legal thing. But also I think they're concerned, not so much in a cap, but I think one of the concerns is having people buying up properties and turning them into Airbnbs, which is definitely going to affect our housing stock. We've been through so many revisions. I don't remember where we stood as far as having corporations buying them and being able to purchase under different LLCs, possibly, buying up blocks of property and then turning a residential neighborhood into it, or is it something that was offered that it should go before planning board for planning board approval to do it, if they comply with all the regulations before they're given the permit. It's just
my opinion on that. I mean, I think it's wrong. Because we have the same situation. It's considered a rental. So even if it's a short term or a long term, the problem's the same. So I know what the zoning law says, or the bulk table, because you have to be considered a resident over 6 months and 1 day. But like I said, it's still a business, both of them. So we're back to where Mary wants to have some sort of registration for long-term rentals also. And if it's a business, why aren't they considered? They'll end up being considered the same thing about going to the planning board to get approval because it's a business.
I feel it's a classic apples and oranges situation. I don't consider it is a business, but I don't consider them the same, to be spoken in the same sentence, because the town was so far out of its way to try to differentiate between a customarily incidental practice of long-term rentals versus boarding house, bed and breakfast, dude ranch. I mean, and so, somebody threw the dart and it got in between the numbers on this one. And I'm concerned about our housing stock. Even Airbnb recommends not to exceed 2 to 3% of your housing stock as short-term rental units. You're going to eliminate the potentially alter your demographic of your town, and they're afraid of that. They don't want to pluck all the feathers off the golden goose with this thing, and I think we should abide by that recommendation. And also the state is starting to make noise in regards to affordable housing, and I think without some kind of cap on this activity, or a proposed cap, we're not doing our share to protect what kind of affordable housing situations that we have in this town. And I'm I feel this comparison between the practice of long-term rentals and comparing them to short-term rentals and vice versa. I think it's disingenuous. I really, I don't see the comparisons. I really don't.
Yeah, but just like you said, though, you don't want corporations coming in and buying everything up. We already have that in our town. We have LLCs coming in and buying all kinds of houses and renting them out. And somebody might be living there, but they're in and out. They're not long-time residents. And that's what you're looking for. You want a long-term resident. You don't want somebody that rents for a year and then it's gone and come back and, then somebody else comes in because you can't afford to rent here as it is anyway.
As a landlord, I'm hoping that my 1 year lease turns into a multi-year.
Well, yeah, you hope so, but
Lucky I have a good tenant.
a lot of
It's roll the dice. There's nothing to say you can't have a neighbor buy a house and then flip it in a couple of years. You
But-
can't control the future.
also in our comprehension plan, this is ecotourism area. Right? It's a part of the master plan. So short-term rentals, well, and I wasn't part of it, but right, but I wasn't part of the whole thing, but it should have coincided.
We're
Be-
not banning short-term rentals, we're just putting a cap on it. And we're gonna have our yearly reviews, there's nothing to say that if things go well, we can't expand it into the future, but once the rabbit's out of the hat, you're not gonna put it back in. And
Well, that's the thing, but people want us to ban it. That's the problem we're having right now. They don't want it, period.
listen, I'm not the biggest proponent of this whole practice, but it's like trying to ban alcohol at this point. It's here. Let's regulate it and let's do it in a fashion that we're taking certain precautions and we could always ease up on it.
So do you recommend that short-term rentals should go to the planning board to get a special use permit?
No. I think that's regulation to over-regulation to eliminate the practice. I think that's death by 1,000 cuts, and I don't go for that. What I am saying though is that we should, after a year, we should say, okay, how many came in? All right, that exceeds the 2 to 3%, so we're putting a moratorium on it to see how it goes. If it doesn't achieve the 2 to 3% of our housing stock, then we can make that number and we can say, okay, this is gonna be our cap, but we're still allowing more into the town. But we're not allowing it to exceed this point until we review it. And so I think this is kind of a safeguard against this thing running amok and having repercussions that we might not foresee. It's not eliminating the practice. You're not saying you can't do it, but if Airbnb is recommending the 2 to 3% not to exceed, who are we to say, the heck with that number, we can let it roll.
If I recall our conversations, a lot of it revolved around that we weren't really sure how many were there, right? That was a lot of it. So, I think we included in that, Matt, and I agree with you 100%. So we have to know how many are there before we can put that. I think we're going the right.
The ones that are doing it already, that we're going to form some kind of exclusion and okay, the music's over and you don't have a chair, you're done.
But after we get that one first year review, which we will, then we can just see how many are there and then say, okay.
Moratorium or we still got some more.
Or we have some to be fair, right? Yeah. I agree with you on that.
I like that too.
Is there an expectation as to how long you think it would be before?
We just have to remember to event it.
If we started, say, January 1, especially because the warmer weather is when everybody's going to be wanting to do it, would we fill that permit time in a few months and then is that something we revisit 3 months from now or back in come April or May, Or is it that we're gonna be looking at a year and people can keep applying all year long? But the permits expire at the end of the year, right?
Well, I mean, I had suggested originally because our slower time, January, February, March, really. Thank you. And then we could,
So they can buy their permit anytime during that year, but it's gonna expire. January or whatever you decide. Yeah,
I mean, whatever you all.
yeah, because somebody might have the Airbnb, they might not start until, I don't know, October, because they don't get there until then. But it ends January 1st, whatever it is.
Can
January.
I ask a dumb
15th.
question? Because the Airbnb permit you guys said is gonna go through like the building permit software that you guys use, right? So when a building permit is almost up, so I take a single family out, I forget how long they're good for, but I'm almost up. Do you guys get a notification from the software saying section lot and block 20124 permit is almost up?
Now we have a clerk that goes through the.
It goes
permits,
through it all and is
and
that good?
Go through it and then we'll send out a notice, although we don't have to because you're the one that's permit holder. You should know how long your permit is, but we will send out a notice. We like to send out a couple. It doesn't always happen. To say your permit's about to expire.
Wanted to get back to what Matt was going, it seems to me that you get a little too far ahead of yourself. So if you set a quota of 5%, 2%, you need to start with how many possible units you've got here for rent. So if you've got, say, 10,000, just picking a number, 5,000 residences here in the town, then you can set your percentage. And then you get a concrete number of, whatever, 200, 300, whatever it happens to be. Do we have an idea of how many?
Oh, no.
potential-
Yeah, I think we've gone over that,
And it's changed. Because it's not as big as it was.
Okay,
So the numbers are all down. If you even go to the county where they're accepting their money for Airbnbs, the numbers are way down.
what I'm saying is you have to have a number of potential Airbnb.
Yeah, but we
But-
don't
but
know
we-
that. Until you put it out there.
no, we don't know how many there are, but you were looking to ask how many residents we have, and if we based it on a two
How
and a half.
many potential Airbnbs do you have?
Right.
Then you can set a percentage.
But we don't know that yet.
Well, we know what the housing stock
Barry's
is.
asking how many houses there are in the whole town of Mankato.
No, we-
So it was 3,000.
Well, we had that. We discussed that number. Yeah,
I can't remember,
it
though.
was,
Yeah, there
right,
was-
it was
Sure,
4,000
it's
and we had a
4,000
figure of like, what, 250 or something like that? Didn't we cap?
Yeah, because the villages don't count in ours.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
So
And then
basically, the first year, it is what it is, whatever we.
No, I understand that. The other thing that popped a question in my mind is, are you gonna designate a number of, say you have 2%, 5%, whatever your percentage is, are you gonna allocate so many here and so many in that residential area, or Yankee Lake area, the lake areas, or?
I don't know, do you want to work this by ward?
I
No,
don't know.
we've already
We think
separated
about
it.
that here, see how many Airbnbs there are
Yeah.
and where.
Yeah, that's too hard to decide because there's going to be some wards that have none.
Listen, you guys
Oh,
know
I
my
understand
opinion. I
that.
think caps.
I don't wanna see them all go
Nonsense,
to,
it's just-
Yankee Lake.
Most of the people that are complaining are people that want to complain about their neighbors doing something. If you don't want your neighbor doing something, you should have opened your pocketbook and bought your house when it was for sale, in my opinion. You know what I
I'm
mean?
concerned about affordable housing. I get concerned when the governor's sending their emissaries into town hall and questioning our zoning.
Mm.
And I think with what we have, we gotta work with trying to maintain some affordability and some housing
Some rental housing stock.
variations in this town. And if we start losing all of our long-term rentals, it's not gonna look good to the state. And these are people that vote, and they're people that go to our stores more frequently, and they're our neighbors. I have people that have lived in the same rental house for 10 years across the road from me. And, whether they own the house or not, they're my neighbors.
Mhm.
Right.
You lose that, and it alters the character of your town, and Airbnb even tips their hat to that. They've come up with that 2 to 3%. And they've done their studies.
I'm just gonna make the argument for affordable housing. We talk about that, but the town not too many years ago decided to go to 10-acre minimums. Right? You talk about increasing property values around here. I can't afford to,
How long was Mountain Greenbelt been? 10 years? I mean, 10 acres, how many years?
I mean, I wouldn't even know how many had.
Before you were here?
And it's
our
not-
zoning has
it's
gotten a
not-
lot more stricter, bigger 10-acre minimums. The zoning completely changed than when my father sat on the town board.
No, no,
Yes,
no.
Bill Herman and co changed the zoning, right? Or no?
So Mountain Greenbelt has always been in our town. Did they increase the areas of?
That's what I
Mountain?
mean.
Yes.
That's what I
They
meant,
increased the
sorry.
zone. But here's the thing, but here's the thing about that is that is if you have 200 acres of land. And you want to subdivide that land. The town says you can, but we want you to have 10-acre minimums.
Okay, but Mary, that makes those properties worth more money, right? If I had 200 acres and I could subdivide it to 2 acres, the cost per lot goes down. So now a young kid like me can go buy a 2-acre lot for a lot cheaper than I can to take a 10-acre lot. And just for example, the roadways, the engineering and all that is gonna cost expensive for the 20 lots that I can get instead of the 100 lots, right? It lowers the price, the top acreage, right? If you lower that, it lowers the price per lot.
Right.
That's the ultimate end of the game. So we talk about housing affordability. I don't think Airbnb's messing with that. I think it's the 10-acre minimums we have throughout 90% of the town. And I'm exaggerating that number, I know.
Well, that's what we're dealing with right now,
The
so.
10-acre minimum also exists because of the comprehensive plan and protecting the environment and things like that.
I don't disagree why it was
But
made. I'm just
same-
saying, we're
and-
talking about affordability. I can't afford a 10-acre lot in the town of Mankato right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Stop it.
So.
All right, let's ask Kira. Kira, can you?
Right?
Right. So I mean, we're gonna
It's
lose
just
a resident that wants to buy a house right here because she can't afford to live here because the prices are so out of whack. And even like Peter Mean talked about it today, she can't even rent something around here. You know, because you got to have 3 jobs and, you know, have your husband have 3 jobs or whatever to make a living here. If you didn't buy it 20 years ago. Right. Well, but that's the thing, because we wanted it to be rural,
Stop.
but we wanted it to be rural. That was the whole process of the comprehension and master plan, to be rural. They wanted to be rural. That's why we don't have septics and water systems, because if we did, you couldn't keep people out of here. Because then the zoning laws for somebody that has sewer and water can go down to an acre of land and they can fight it through the state.
It's Rockland, it's areas with much more dense zoning.
Yeah, but 5 years ago, you could afford to live here. Now you can't. In 5
I
years,
think
it's
we're getting out
changed.
of the picture.
Oh,
I personally don't think Airbnb is gonna affect it that much. I know Airbnb says they do, but they're only doing that because of people making waves, so they put a number on there to cover themselves, in my opinion, as a corporation. I don't think Airbnbs are that proficient here, and I think, again, we ask for ecotourism and for people to come here, but we don't give them a place to stay. The only place we have is the Days Inn. So what are we telling them? Come here, walk our trails, but get out and go to Middletown? Listen, I agree with you, wait for the year, right?
I do
Let's
too.
talk about it in a year and I'll argue against it in a year and we can talk about it. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves on a cap now. I think we need to see what's there because I don't think it's as bad as
And I
everyone's
also
thinking.
feel
It'd be.
that, at least the discussion of the cap is a motivational factor for
Mhm.
people to get into the system.
Yeah, because we're gonna still have people that know that they have violations and still gonna run Airbnb that we're gonna have to chase.
Yep.
I could tell you that right now. I could probably pick out 4 in the town right now that I know are gonna be a headache. You know, that no matter what we do, they're still gonna rent it out without anybody knowing. Because now they're gonna do it through people that have already rented it from them, or, you know, and that's the problem Airbnb's having now. Is that once somebody gets in and they like the place and everything else, well, next time, don't go through Airbnb. I'll give you a better price.
County's getting less taxes because they're
Right.
not doing it that way. They're still doing
You're
it.
going around,
Right.
Back
you're going around the system.
Goes
Right.
underground,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that's gonna be a problem for us too.
Well, and I think, the idea is a year from now, we sit down and go through this again, because there's gonna be things that we thought were gonna be a problem that aren't gonna be a problem. There'll be things that we never thought were gonna be a problem that will be a
Right,
problem. So
exactly.
That's why you go through that. That's why we just don't go, oh, we're done with this. We don't ever have to think about it again. It's something we're gonna have to
So
think about.
we reserve the
We
right
fix
to
it.
review.
And we'll try to fix it, right? Whatever we
I-
need, but
Yep.
we fix it.
Ben
Anything
took
within
that
the
out of
next.
back, but I feel like that's, I feel
I
like
know
that's
it was in
any
there
law
because I
that
know
we
he argued
write,
about,
we
like,
always
that
have the
has to
right
be
to
there,
go
right?
back, and
Yeah.
we just have to remember. Right, you don't wanna, I remember Ben saying you don't wanna do a sunset clause, cause it says if we don't vote on
Well, then
anything,
we
it
have to
don't, it
discuss
goes
what the
away.
actual name of
It gets
was.
eliminated as a law.
Right. It's
So
an
you
open
don't
option.
want a
It's an open
sunset,
option to
we just
revisit.
have to remember to revisit it in a year. Put a timer on your calendar.
And actually, there's nothing saying that we can't do it sooner.
Yeah, we could do it in 6 months if we find out we get 700 Airbnb applications in January.
Which I don't.
I
think
hope you
that's-
guys don't get that because you
Thank
guys will
you.
be pulling hairs.
What if none of yous are here in a year?
Good luck
No, we don't. Wait, no, we still will be.
until the end of the year.
Assuming we pass it before the end of the year this year, we will all still be
We
here.
have
in the year.
13
Yeah,
months.
we can fix it before.
So we have to pass it before December 31st. That's our timeline.
Fix it before December 31st.
Plenty of time, right?
So just one thing, so I know that, Ben had added this 15710 number 7 to this, but if you draw your attention to 15713. So we'll need to,
Contradicts it.
yeah, so he's gonna have to
Look at it
do a
again.
little, yeah, and perhaps we can have a minute to read this as well tomorrow and whatever.
Okay.
We just got it, so.
Yeah, he sent it
Yeah.
to us this afternoon, so. All right.
Mm.
So we'll get some of this ready and get back. We're gonna close the public hearing on Tuesday.
Mhm.
And we'll have to revise this and probably open it back up before we can vote.
If we're rewriting it.
Right. And then we'll put it back out and then we'll hopefully vote on it by the end of the month in December.
Or it's gonna be somebody else's problem a year from now.
Yeah.
Still be our problem though.
It's not if you quit on me.
You know the rule. Fired.
I go, you.
Leaving, fired, or I'm not going.
All right, we are not gonna have public comment tonight, so the public hearing's still open, so if you didn't like something that you heard tonight, you can send us a letter again. Anybody that's online, we don't have a lot of people here. We already kind of talked to Kathy before the meeting, so. Lori just got here, so. But, thanks everybody for coming and, we'll see you Tuesday night. Thank you.